Hey guys, it's Cam from Craft and Tailored, and in this episode of What Is On My Wrist, we're talking about a really special watch. The watch is a 2007 Rolex GMT, reference 16710, which is also a Coke GMT. This watch is actually very special for a couple of different reasons. One, it's actually a rare variant of the 16710, known as an error dial. So we're gonna talk about error dials in this episode. But the other thing that we're gonna talk about is the military provenance that comes with this watch. So this watch has been nicknamed the Delta Force, and the nickname is actually quite fitting because this watch was actually owned by a Delta Force operator. Delta Force is officially known as the First Special Forces Operational Detachment, or first SFOD-D, but Delta Force in a nutshell is one of the US Special Missions units primarily focused on counter-terrorism, and Delta Force is an elite special operations force under the United States Army, which also falls under the Joint Special Operations Command, also known as JSOC. So, you know, the Navy SEALs are under JSOC, and there's a bunch of other, special operations units that fall under JSOC, DevGru, all that kind of stuff. We can go down the Special Forces rabbit hole there. But this watch was actually owned by a Special Forces or Delta Force operator. The watch was purchased in 2008 in Pinehurst, North Carolina at Reed's Jewelers, who is the official Rolex authorized dealer in North Carolina that's close to Fort Bragg. So Fort Bragg is where Delta Force trains, operates, and is based out of. They're based out of Fort Bragg in North Carolina. This specific watch accompanied the original owner during his 2 tours in Afghanistan as a Seargent First Class. Really incredible watch, because often we think about these watches as tools, and this watch specifically was really put through its paces during its 2 tours in Afghanistan with the original owner. So really honored to have this watch. I want to talk to you a little bit about the error dial, because this error dial or stick dial, because they're really interesting. But the Rolex 16710, there's essentially 2 different dial variants for the reference range, and the stick dial basically means that the 2 in GMT-Master II, as opposed to having the traditional Roman numeral 2 with like the tops of the 2, this specific example just has 2 lines. So it's very uncommon, because some people say that was done in error by Rolex. It's interesting because at the same time when this watch was released, you could also find them with the more traditional Roman numeral as well. So it's called an error dial, or sometimes it's just referred to as a stick dial, which makes this very collectible from that perspective. I actually kind of like the look of it. Again, I'm a nerd when it comes to those types of details. I'm a guy that is, again, looping everything, looking at fonts, looking at, text, all that kind of stuff. The other really cool thing about this specific example, and again, we'll kind of dive into this before we get into the provenance, but the watch retains its original paperwork, its instruction booklets, the white card. This card is typically white or black, depending on the year of manufacture. That kind of goes in between everything to protect it from, to protect the cards from rubbing up against each other, which is really awesome. And it also includes its original paperwork. So we've got the original Rolex paperwork from 2008, which is really interesting because the watch is a 2007, but it was purchased in 2008. So what we're finding in some cases too with vintage watches is that the authorized dealer, in this case it was Reed's out of North Carolina, they probably had the watch in their inventory for about a year. And most authorized dealers will be sent, or at least back in this time frame, will be sent a grouping of watches that makes up their inventory, and then they would slowly sell those watches throughout the year before there was a stainless steel shortage and all that kind of stuff through Rolex. So this watch retains all of its inner outer boxes, which makes it really special and kind of cool, and adds to the element of it being, a stick dial, which is also, kind of cool. All right, now let's talk about this watch being a military watch. It wasn't military issued. I actually think this watch is kind of cooler than what we would see in some military issued watches, because with some of those military watches, like like a mil sub or something like that, you really don't know about the guys that wore the watch and or what the watch saw in terms of like action or service or anything like that. This watch retains not only its original box and papers and the original sales receipt and the hang tag and that kind of stuff, but it also includes the decommissioning papers for Mr. Hunter Rudd, who was the owner of this watch. We actually acquired this watch from a friend of ours who runs a company called Crown and Oyster Case. So I'll provide a link to his Instagram below. And what's interesting is that we're a specialist of vintage watches and kind of stuff that is unique and interesting and stuff like that. So a lot of times we'll get watches in from our friends and other dealers through the network that are like, hey Cam, this is in your alley. I don't really have the customer base for this, or are you interested in these types of things? So there's not some like underground watch dealer network where like this stuff is like kind of being traded behind the scenes. In some cases it's through another dealer, in some cases it's through somebody that again finds us on YouTube or Instagram or something like that and says, hey, I have something interesting, are you interested in it? And so that's in some cases how we find watches like this. And sometimes it's through that like back alley watch dealer network that doesn't exist. So thanks Ricky at Crown and Oyster Case for sending this to us. Ricky's a really cool dude and kind of getting into the watch dealing side of things. And I'll provide a link in the description below so you can check out his Instagram and give him a shout for some of the stuff that he specializes in. So Ricky called us and said, hey, I've got this really interesting watch. It comes with a bunch of military history. And I was like, yeah, send it over. What do you got? And he's like, oh, it's an Aerodile 16710. I'm like, well, that's cool, right? Because I like unique and weird stuff like that. And he said, oh, but also it was owned and used by a guy that was a member of the Delta Force. I said, well, that's even cooler. What's the story? Hunter, I think, reached out to Ricky and they put something together and we kind of partnered up. And before we get into the story of Mr. Hunter Rudd, I want to say, Hunter, thank you for your service. It is guys like Hunter and Special Forces and JSOC and all those guys that are doing the stuff that guys like us and guys like you in most cases can't do to protect freedoms globally. And the cool thing about the JSOC community and the Special Forces community is that these guys are highly trained. They're the best of the best. And if you really peel back the layers of the onion around that community, it's awesome. The passion, the intensity, the dedication, the types of characters that are involved in that communities that protect the global freedoms and fight global war on terror or just terrorism in general, you have to be a guy that is ready to basically give your life, and that is awesome. And I think what's interesting about watches like this is that, when I look at the Submariner, it creates an experience and or a feeling for me. Military issued watches are watches that have seen combat. These watches are built as tools. And the cool thing about Hunter is when he got this watch before his first deployment into Afghanistan, I think he probably was looking at it like this. Hunter, if you're out there and you want to comment, let us know. But this watch, if I was going into combat, this is a watch that I think would check a lot of boxes for me. If I'm overseas, I want to know what time it is at home or in different locations. I can definitely use the GMT complication. The 16710 is built like a tank, quite literally. This watch has seen 2 tours in Afghanistan and it has some battle scars, so to speak, but the watch remains in really, really good unpolished condition. There's no nicks or chips in the crystal. The watch is running and it serves a purpose. It tells the time, it gives you the date. It's got a sapphire crystal. It's got, it's a waterproof watch. So this watch literally saw pretty much the worst of the worst, I'm sure, and is still awesome and still running and serves a purpose. So when we talk about some of these watches, we're talking about these watches being a tool watch, but I don't really think a lot of those watches actually see combat, see mud, see, sand and all those kinds of things. And this watch did, and it's in really good condition after 2 tours in Iraq. Now more about Hunter. Hunter, again, part of Delta Force. The cool thing about Hunter is, you know, he saw some crap. I mean, again, thank you for your service, Hunter. The watch, this exact watch, accompanied Hunter during his 2 tours in Afghanistan as a Sergeant First Class. Hunter was the recipient of 3 Bronze Stars, the Defense Materials Service Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, the Purple Heart, among many, many others. And Hunter actually provided, you know, basically his service record along with the letter that he received from Reed's Jewelers. This watch is incredible, and it's also full set. So I think the watch is obviously going to remain collectible because it, you know, has seen action. It's, you know, kind of what we would call an exotic error dial. It's in really, really good condition. So if you swipe up or click on the link above, you can learn a little bit more about this watch. Additionally, Hodinkee, our friends over at Hodinkee, featured this watch in their weekly segment, Bring a Loop. So I'll provide a link in the description above or below so that you can learn more about this watch and Mr. Hunter Rudd, who wore this watch, and take a closer look at this. So again, watch is in really, really cool condition. It's definitely worthy of some time on the wrist. You know, I think it makes for interesting conversation, not because the watch is an error dial. I think that in itself is cool, but the watch, you know, saw action and was used for its intended purpose. And I think ultimately that's why Hunter selected a watch like this to accompany him during his time in the service and, you know, offshore. So in any case, thanks again, Hunter, for your service. I really, really appreciate you and guys in the community, because I'm sitting here in Los Angeles and enjoying this nice weather, and there's not some, you know, terrorist dude that, you know, is wreaking havoc. And so thank you for protecting us, and thank you for your service. Again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and be sure to follow us on Instagram for the latest content from Craft and Tailored. If you have watch questions, if you need some help, feel free to drop us a line and or leverage our chat feature on craftandtailored.com. If we can help out, drop us a line at info@craftandtailored.com. And thanks as always, guys, for tuning in. I will see you in the next one.